Escape from Tarkov is a game that infuriates me, yet I always go back for more every single time. And it's no different for a game called Marauders, which shares a lot of similarities to Tarkov, yet it does things that I much prefer. The game costs 45 Australian dollars, and I want to talk about whether it is worth your time and money, and I want to also explain why it has me hooked, and I also want to explain why I will be presenting this game to the boys so they can hopefully invest in this game so we can all play it together. So to start off, Marauders is a tactical FPS in the form of a looter shooter with extraction points, and it was made by a small British company called Small Impact Games, and it's published by Team 17. The game is set in a fictional universe where the Great War never ended, and the continual destruction and industrialization has completely destroyed the Earth, but the war still continues till the 90s, and it is in outer space now. You play as a Marauder, but you can trade and work with the four main factions, that being the pirates, who are more or less neutral. You have the United Allies, who are made up of the remnants of the USA and France. There's the Kingdom Alliance, which is made up of the United Kingdom, and finally you have the Central Empire, which is made up of Germany and Italy. And I know that a lot of you are World War I connoisseurs, and you're just looking at this hypothetical map that I made, and you're just very confused. I understand. Now, I can't find any information on Austria-Hungary, but we have Soviet-made weaponry in the game, so did the October Revolution happen? Will we see space communists?
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
Hopefully they do expand on the lore a little bit so we can get a clear picture as to why Germany and Italy are in an alliance and why France and the UK... Okay, well that kind of makes sense why they hate each other. But you as a Marauder fight in 5 possible locations, each being distinct from the next. This includes an abandoned iridium mine that is packed full of mechanical machinery, as well as hides a vault full of good loot that can only be opened with a blowtorch. A spaceport which has many shops and even a bank vault. There's a naval outpost that was controlled by the Central Empire, and it just so happens to have an abundance amount of weaponry and ammunition. There's also a penal colony that is completely surrounded with flak guns and can make entering it a challenge compared to the previous maps. And the last map we have is set on a terraformer, which I found had a lot more open areas compared to the other maps, and within the maps you'll find AI enemies such as prisoners or former miners. And the whole game universe features a diesel punk aesthetic, but now that you have some form of an idea what this game is about, let's have a look at what the gameplay is actually like. And yes, it can be repetitive at times, especially since you have no control over the maps you play on, which makes completing some challenges a little harder. But in games like Tarkov, you might have raids where you run around and don't even get to see anything before extracting. In Marauders, you are almost guaranteed to encounter an enemy. And obviously in a game like this, if you have friends to actually play with, you'll do significantly better than someone who's soloing, especially if you decide to bum rush them, which is what happened to me. But it makes boarding enemy ships easier as well, more on that later. But you have a countdown similar to the extraction timer in Tarkov, where I think it just assumes you become MIA. You die of a lack of oxygen instead. Now that you know what the gameplay loop is like, how does it apply to the maps? One of the criticisms that I see going around about Marauders is the maps are repetitive, and that is a fair criticism because there isn't that much of a wide selection. But before you actually go into the map, you can just look around it, and it really does look beautiful. You feel like you are far from home, although I mean there isn't really a home left anymore, but as you take in the surroundings, you see enemy ships converging on you, and do you fire before they fire at you? You can use your surroundings to try and evade the enemies, but when you do enter the actual map, majority of it is close quarters and at times can be really spooky. And that's also because you don't know how many enemies there actually are. Sure, you might see ships enter the arena, but you don't know if they have a full squad or not, so you have to rely on your hearing. Similar to a game like CSGO and Tarkov, this is one of the most important things that you have to utilize. If you are deaf or you have a bad sound system, you are really going to struggle. I use a headset and I'm able to determine exactly where the enemy is based on the type of surface that they are walking on, and I'm also able to determine how many there are based on how many footsteps, and because of this I've been able to set up a good couple of ambushes. But graphically, yeah, it does look nice, but it's nothing too spectacular, but the actual space imagery is really well done. I like it. And in terms of performance, I'm able to get well over 60 FPS running at 1440p with all the highest graphics settings. Now, in Tarkov, I hear people mention meta this, meta that, and I've got no clue what it is, but I feel like most guns excel at different things. And if you equip a pistol, you still have a good chance. The submachine guns outclass the semi-automatic weapons in my opinion, but the shotguns are interesting because they don't have the range and realism like RS2, especially since after a certain range you don't feel like you're doing too much damage, especially if they aren't armored. But what I tend to do is I set up an ambush, dump a shell into them, and if that doesn't take them down, I'll quickly switch to my sidearm, especially the Mauser, which in this game is automatic, and that usually does the trick. Now, there isn't 50 different kinds of ammo, and it's a lot more simpler than Tarkov. You just have your 10mm, 9mm, 5.56 and whatnot, and they can all be used by the same guns that take those types of ammo. And obviously some bullets respond better to certain types of armor and whatnot, but it's not as in-depth as Tarkov, which I honestly prefer. But one unique thing about this game is the shipbuilding. In Tarkov, you have your little hideouts that you can upgrade to get a wide range of benefits, but it's just safe space. Nothing bad can happen to it, but in Marauders, you can build and upgrade ships, and there's no insurance system in place. I spent a good couple of hours upgrading a ship just to get boarded and domed, and I still feel salty about that because it didn't happen once, it's happened a couple of times, and I'll get more into that in a second. And the thought of someone else flying it around makes me sick because I spent the time to build it and upgrade it, but the ships handle differently depending on which one you have, and they can be upgraded, but if you take too many hits, then the MW2 tactical nuke sound, that's what I thought it sounded like, will start to play. And this means you only have a good couple of seconds before the thing blows up, but you can use the escape pods to board other ships and steal them as well as leave the area. And one time I got a little bit cocky, if I'm gonna be honest. I'm like, oh, here's a nice ship, I'm gonna steal it. I boarded it, and I don't know if this is like hacks, a glitch, or an exploit, or a game mechanic, but I boarded the enemy ship, and I see this, and I'm like, oh, easy free kill, right? Well, no, it was like a bloody hologram and I got ambushed. Another time I boarded a ship that was about to blow up and I didn't actually know what that tactical nuke sound meant, and as I'm about to get to the escape pod, I just die, and I took an extra couple of seconds because I was just like, what the fuck's happening? Why can't I steal this ship? Oh, it's gonna blow up. And I took a pretty big L because the pilot of that ship managed to get off and I was stranded on there. But a really great butt-clenching moment that I had was when I was in a dogfight. I had an enemy ship on my rear, I'm pulling evasive maneuvers, and they're landing shot after shot. I'm doing everything I can to get them off my tail, or at least make them miss a shot or two, which was thankfully just enough to get me out of the raid. And it's moments like that make me feel alive, because I had lots of nice loot and I was inches away from freedom. But this game does need car insurance in my opinion, because I gave up building better ships because I've had 3 of them all gone because I either got boarded, which is fair play, I'm not going to complain about that, but also because I died. Why would I risk using my good ship when I can fare through with the basic ship just fine? Sure, it's not the fastest, but if I get destroyed, I can always use the escape pods and then get to the exit points. And the thing with the escape pods is that if they get destroyed, the enemy that killed you can't actually take your loot. So I found that there wasn't too much of an incentive to go after the escape pod as long as you didn't try to board them. So yes, I know that I've compared this game to Tarkov a fair bit, and that's because the games are extremely similar, but I want to draw some comparisons that I like and don't like between the two games. So for starters, there is weapon customization, but unlike Tarkov where there is 50 million different kinds of bullets and a spreadsheet that gets released at every fucking update, just like a newsletter does, detailing every metric of the ammo and how it responds to different armor and whatnot, that can get a little frustrating, especially for a new player. In Marauders, it's simple. You just got different sizes of ammo, but there's no hollow point, armor piercing, anything fancy basically. And I found upgrading parts as well as crafting things much simpler. But one of my gripes with Tarkov was the janky movement. It caught me off guard the first time I played it, but I know why they made it like this. Carrying 20 kilograms on your back won't be easy, especially if you're trying to fire a gun, but in Marauders, you're much more agile and the animations feel a lot more refined. If you stop sprinting, you won't drag your feet on the ground, and this also makes combat much easier to deal with and more fun, in my opinion. But another comparison that I want to make, which can be a little bit controversial for some people, but this is the necessity management, and what I mean is energy, hydration, and healing. They are much more simpler. Food and water reduce your fatigue as well as heal you at certain rates, as well as bandages. It didn't feel like I needed to be first aid certified like in Tarkov, but it's a lot harder to actually die. Sure, you take, a couple of hits, you're gonna die, but in Tarkov, you take one bullet or you fall from a height, you break your legs, but you feel a lot more vulnerable in Tarkov, especially if you're just limping to an extraction point, you're bleeding to death. One bullet can really be the be-all, end-all of your raid, but in Marauders, it's a lot easier to heal and manage your necessities and your health. Especially since in Tarkov it's like, oh, do I eat this? I'll get more energy, but I'll lose hydration at this rate for this long. But the next thing I like about Marauders is there's no keister crate, or what I like, that's what I call it. It's the fucking crate that can't lose your items. I forgot what it's called, but a friend of mine that I was playing with basically said that, you shove the items up your ass and they can't be looted. But in Marauders, you don't get that. You can't put your valuable items in a secure chest. If you die, you lose it. But one criticism that I see of Marauders is that there's no Scav Equivalent, because in Tarkov you have your PMC character, which is your main character, and if you lose everything on that, you still have your Scav, which you can play every so often depending on your cooldown. In Marauders, you only have one character, and I've seen people say that they've ran out of money, they can't buy gear or compete, but that's actually incorrect, because in your starter ship, you'll always be given a Luger, ammo, and a vest, and this is just enough to go out on a raid. And if it isn't, you can always just sell these weapons as well as the fire extinguishers in the ship, because they respawn at the start of every raid. So there is a safety net in place just in case if you do suffer from a skill issue. However, this safety net, it's a good thing, but it also means that I don't really need to bring in my good gear. Obviously, if I go against a fully kitted squad, then I'm gonna have a bad time, but there's a lot of AI that you can more or less take advantage of, so you can still get some good gear, which is that leads me on to the next thing that I want to say. There are some glitches here and there. People are reporting on the fact that they have inventory glitches where they lose their items, which in a game like this, that is extremely frustrating. And I myself got some good loot and I glitched into a door. There was nothing I could do. I was just stuck there and I was so upset because I lost everything basically. But compared to Tarkov, the skill ceiling isn't as high. Sure, you'll have death squads of fully kitted out gear going around and absolutely demolishing you, but due to the close proximity of the maps, you aren't going to be domed from half a kilometer away by a sniper, and there's also no skill leveling. The game doesn't feel like a full-time commitment like Tarkov does. Yes, it is going to be a hard game for casual players, but if you like punishing shooters or a lot of the good elements from Tarkov, then you're gonna like this game and it's a lot more forgiving. And yes, I know throughout the video I drew a lot of comparisons to Tarkov, but people call this Space Tarkov, and there are so many parallels between the two games. You'd think they were made by the same company, but to answer the question whether it's worth it or not, I'm a little hesitant at first because the game is in early access at the moment and there isn't a whole lot of content. There's still a lot there, but there's not a plethora of things to do on the scale of Escape from Tarkov, but I would keep an eye on this game. If you and a couple of mates can get it whilst it's on sale, I can tell you you're gonna have a lot of fun. But if Marauders really wants to commit being an Escape from Tarkov clone, they should just never leave early access. But in all seriousness, if you want to see my Tarkov video, do click on the video that is on screen, because I'm going to end the video there, because my name is Tan2, and I'm going to catch you guys in the next video. Peace.